Terrible Tilly. On the northern Oregon coast is an infamous deactivated lighthouse with such a disquieting reputation and history that it's earned the nickname Terrible Tilly among locals. Located approximately 1.2 miles offshore and 20 miles from the mouth of the Columbia River, Terrible Tilly, officially known as Tillamook Rocklight, perches atop a deadly jagged rock, occupying less than an acre. Construction of the lighthouse began in 1878, taking over 500 days to complete, due to the challenges of transporting materials to the island and the reluctance of locals to assist. As a result, it became the most expensive lighthouse ever built on America's west coast. A combination of perilous conditions and unpredictable local weather patterns led to the lighthouse's ominous nickname. Even before its completion in January 1881, Terrible Tilly played a role in the sinking of the sailing vessel Lupatia, resulting in the death of its entire crew. According to legend, the captain realized they were too close to shore when Mr. Wheeler, the man overseeing Tilly's construction, heard the Lupatia crew's voices and ordered his men to light lanterns and build a bonfire. Despite their frantic efforts, the Lupatia disappeared into the fog, presumably intact. The following morning, the crew's 16 corpses were found scattered across the shore of Tillamook Head, with only the ship's dog surviving. Over the years, various keepers residing at Tilly have reportedly experienced madness, death, and even alleged hauntings. Before the lighthouse's construction, Native Americans believed the rock was inhabited by ghosts and evil spirits dwelling in deep tunnels within it. In one eerie account, all 4 on-duty keepers claimed to have seen a ghost ship, accompanied by a whispering moan like a pained cry. For decades, severe weather assaulted the structure, eroding its facade and the surrounding rock, shattering the lens and rendering the structure unsound. Consequently, the lighthouse was decommissioned in 1957 and sold to private investors in 1959. Terrible Tilly changed hands multiple times before an investment group acquired it in 1980, intending to offer the island as a columbarium for storing funerary urns called Eternity at Sea. They envisioned space for up to 300,000 urns. However, only 30 individuals would ultimately be interred there. The urns faced a cruel fate, as the materials used disintegrated in the harsh marine environment. In 2022, the island was listed for sale at $6.5 million, with additional repairs needed due to nesting birds and sea lions. Despite changes in the structure, the rock on which it sits, and Terrible Tilly's ownership, allegations of hauntings have not ceased. Patri Prison. Located along the Estonian coast on the shore of Tallinn Bay, Patri Prison is an immense sprawling fortress occupying approximately 4 hectares of land. Constructed for Emperor Nicholas I of the Russian state between 1830 and 1837, the fort was converted into a barracks following the Crimean War and later transformed into a prison by the newly independent Estonia after World War I. Patri once functioned as Estonia's largest prison, with a capacity for up to 1,000 prisoners and a dedicated hospital. Bars were added to windows, and walls were reinforced to accommodate the facility's new purpose. During the 1920s, Patri was expanded to house the growing numbers of arrested communists, quickly gaining a reputation for its dreadful conditions. Violence was rampant, and guards treated prisoners harshly, with torture being a frequent occurrence. The prison underwent a series of regime changes from 1940 onward. During the Soviet occupation in 1940, former prisoners were pardoned or had their sentences shortened, only to be replaced by public officials, military officers, and others deemed spies or enemies of the new regime. Many faced execution or deportation to Siberia. From 1941 to 1944, under German occupation, the prison was renamed Tallinn Labor and Correctional Camp No. 1. Housing Estonians arrested on political and racial grounds, including local Jews, the facility functioned as a forced labor camp. Executions likely took place during the early part of this period, and the prison later became a transit camp for prisoners shipped from Estonia. Following the Soviet reoccupation in 1944, the prison was renamed Remand Isolator No. 1 and administered by the Estonian SSR Ministry of Internal Affairs. It held political prisoners and those under investigation, many of whom were sent to forced labor camps in the Soviet Union. The prison remained operational until 2002, when the restored Republic of Estonia ordered its abandonment. Today, urban explorers traverse the forgotten halls, which still bear traces of the prisoners who once resided there. As visitors pass peeling graffiti, heavy iron doors, dimly lit cells, and eerie surgical spaces, they often feel as if the ghosts of its former inmates still inhabit Patri Prison. Patri Prison remains a potent symbol of the political terror imposed by both Nazi and Soviet regimes, even after Estonia regained its independence. To commemorate this dark history, the Estonian Institute of Historical Memory is currently working to establish a museum of communist crimes at the location, with an anticipated opening date in 2025. Nazi Torpedo Base. In the icy waters of the Baltic Sea off the Polish coast lies a concrete complex known to locals as Torpedonia. This sinister structure, visible from nearby beaches, was once a torpedo launch station established by the Germans during World War II. Torpedonia played a pivotal role in the Luftwaffe's testing of aerial torpedoes, which would drop from various aircraft to deliver devastating warheads. The research typically involved launching munitions at the nearby Hel Peninsula and dispatching smaller vessels to retrieve the torpedo remnants for examination. The strategic location of Torpedonia proved essential in developing German missiles, which foreign countries had previously supplied. After years of testing, the German forces abandoned Torpedonia in March 1945 as the Red Army closed in. In the wake of the war, the Potsdam Agreement restored the region to Poland. However, this Nazi torpedo base ultimately fell into Soviet hands, who used it for dive training specialist troops. The Soviets stripped the facility of its equipment and left it to decay, gradually falling into disrepair. To make the location less accessible, they destroyed the wooden pier connecting it to land, the remnants of which are still visible today. Despite its dilapidated state, brave swimmers continue to explore the torpedo base each year. Now a twisted mass of rusting iron and crumbling concrete, marred by graffiti and corrosion, Torpedonia bears the scars of its dark wartime legacy. Fort Alexander. Situated in the Gulf of Finland, off the Russian coast near St. Petersburg, is a man-made island built as a naval fortress that once had an even more deadly purpose, one which earned it the name Plague Island. Between 1838 and 1845, Fort Alexander came to life as a strategic military base designed to control the vital Gulf of Finland, thus securing essential shipping lanes between Russia, the Baltic Sea, and the Atlantic Ocean. Though not the first of its kind, Fort Alexander was one of the most impressive fortifications in the Gulf. Builders drove 5,535 piles, each 40 feet long, deep into the seabed, layering sand, concrete, and granite slabs on top. Fort Alexander's massive structure spans over 54,000 square feet across 3 floors. At its peak, the fort housed 1,000 men and accommodated 103 cannons and an additional 34 guns on the roof. While playing a strategic role in the Crimean War from 1853 to 1856, the fort never faced real action. However, its purpose shifted after the Russian government established the Commission on the Prevention of Plague in the late 19th century. The island became home to a state-of-the-art laboratory in 1897 dedicated to dangerous bacteriological research. Equipped with a scientific library, containment labs, and cremation chambers for spent lab animals, Fort Alexander focused primarily on developing plague vaccines. Later, researchers delved into other deadly diseases, including tuberculosis, cholera, scarlatina, and typhus. Between 1904 and 1907, the hazardous nature of the work led to several staff members contracting the plague, resulting in numerous fatalities, including the head doctor. Another doctor, who caught the bubonic plague, treated himself with an experimental serum and ultimately recovered. Contemporary accounts reference plague-infected rabbits, monkeys, guinea pigs, and horses housed in a dedicated stable on the island. In 1917, Fort Alexander's operations ceased, and research responsibilities transferred to larger facilities throughout Russia. The Navy then utilized the island for decades before abandoning it entirely in 1983. Following its abandonment, the island became a popular destination for illicit raves and wild parties. The government sealed the fort in response, and administrators began developing plans for a $43 million renovation project. Ferocia. Nestled in the Famagusta region of Cyprus lies Ferocia, a ghost town once functioning as a bustling resort, but left to the ravages of time since the 1970s. Spanning an area of 2.4 square miles, Ferocia was designed to accommodate the influx of tourists flocking to Cyprus during that time. Towering high-rise hotels were constructed, and essential infrastructure was established. In the early 1970s, Ferocia emerged as one of the world's most popular tourist destinations, attracting celebrities such as Raquel Welch and Elizabeth Taylor, who reveled in the sun-soaked paradise during its golden era. At its peak, Ferocia was home to nearly 40,000 permanent residents and welcomed around 700,000 visitors annually. However, the Turkish invasion of Greece in 1974 prompted many to flee, leaving their homes and businesses behind. The Turkish military cordoned off the entire resort with corrugated steel panels and menacing signs, declaring Ferocia a forbidden zone and warning potential trespassers. As locals hastily evacuated, Ferocia became eerily frozen in time, drawing unsettling parallels to Pripyat, Chernobyl. Prickly pear bushes soon overtook streets, and cars rusted in place. Locals have described the overgrown area as, quote, some sort of post-apocalyptic nightmare. It took years for people to begin returning, and even longer for Ferocia to regain some semblance of its former self. By 2011, a small number of people started resettling in the area, resulting in a permanent population of 226 and occasional tourists. Despite these changes, Ferocia remains a mere shadow of its once thriving self. Now, the landscape is dominated by the hollow concrete shells of hotels, remnants of military occupation, tangled barbed wire, and telltale signs of the violent and unjust takeover that this once idyllic resort town endured. Are you brave enough to venture into any of these abandoned places? Or perhaps you'd like to be laid to rest in one of them? Let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you for watching Dark 5. Like and subscribe to continue exploring the greatest mysteries of this world and beyond.